So this is even
That was fun.
a pre-visit.
Yeah, people can walk in and.
Yeah.
We've been walking in for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Malika, excited to be in your studio. And let's. Would you like to share a bit about your work, or would you like us to just take it in and give feedback?
Okay.
Well, I'm a little shy, but I can talk about my latest project a little bit. So hi, as you can see, I do mainly portraitures, but my latest project is called Bronx Stories, where I'm collecting portraits of people who I think are of note in the Bronx and pairing them with botanicals that they have chosen and collecting their stories. So I'm working on the first two. The first one is mostly done. This is the second one. I've collected about 8 individuals. I will probably not do all 8 in the time I have here, so I'm hoping to finish the second one, and perhaps by the end of my time here, I'll probably maybe have 4 done, since this one should be done probably within the next 2 weeks, so maybe I can do 2 more. And off you go.
Is it a specific location of the Bronx, or is it just a generally entire area of the coverage of the Bronx? Are you kind of looking for?
So the aim of the project is just people who currently live in the Bronx. They don't have to be born in the Bronx, but the point is just to capture a snapshot of time of people who currently live there. It's mostly about like if they've made an impact or how they feel about the Bronx, because I think it's important to take a record of the people who inhabit space.
Right.
I guess it's mostly because I feel like I inhabit this space. Like I came here, and it would kind of been a shame if I like came here, lived here, and I just went poof, and nobody cared if I was here or not.
Right.
But it really came to fruition when I was I went to the 50th anniversary. Like the Bronx invented hip hop, and they had the 50th anniversary, and I went to this opening at the documentary center, which is like really close to my house, and I was there with some of my friends who are from the Bronx, and we're all the same age, but while we were there, we were looking at these photos, and they were calling their parents up, and their parents were telling them all these stories about like, oh my gosh, I remember this, and oh my god, the government cheese, and I used to walk on the street, and like they had all these stories about like the legacy of like the Bronx, and I was thinking to myself, who is taking record of these stories? Like, what happens to these stories, like, if nobody's, like, sitting down and talking to these people and, like, taking record of, like, their existences? Like, they've been here, they might have been born here, but they've been here. Like, some of my friends, like, their parents came there when they were, like, in their 20s, and they lived their whole lives there since then. And nobody has sat down and, like, talked to them and collected their, like, all the work that they've done and the impact they've made. And I thought to myself, like, I can do that. So I thought to myself, I know a bunch of incredible people who've done a bunch of stuff in the Bronx, and I like portraits, and I want to like say and inhabit like all this work that people have been doing in the Bronx, and like all the impact that they've had, and like spread that around. So Bronx Stories.
Bronx Tale.
Yes, a Bronx tale.
Bronx
Spread
Tale.
around. And since I've started the Bronx Stories, all my people that I know who are not from the Bronx have decided that they would also like a story, so I'm probably going to expand this to like a Brooklyn Stories and Queens Stories eventually.
Oh, so it's gonna be like eventually you're planning to do like a story
Expansion.
from each
Yeah,
different-
I think I'm gonna have to. I've been getting a lot of threats. I've been getting a lot of requests. Yeah, I had a friend like, why can't you pay me? And I'm like, you don't live in the Bronx. And they're like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to expand. But I'm focusing on the Bronx right now because I live in the Bronx, and I work in the Bronx, and my life is in the Bronx. So I think I have to do my due diligence and pay respect to where I live.
Right.
Do that first, and then I can expand. But yeah.
Awesome.
Is this the guy, the subject matter here, he has like a lot of stuffed animals, or is that somebody else? Is that with the dolphin on his back?
Oh, okay, I can tell you about Fred. Fred runs to encourage others to clean up the Bronx River. So he started running because he knows, well, when he first started running, there were dolphins in the Bronx River. Since then, the Bronx River has become incredibly polluted, thus so that the dolphins have, left. But he does this thing called plugging, which I believe is a real word, which is like, cleaning up the debris and like all the different stuff in the Bronx River. And he does these like 5Ks, and he organizes these huge groups to go run and like clean up all the like pollution and stuff. So he has this dolphin hat called Dolphy, which he wears to remind people of his goal to clean the Bronx River enough so that the dolphins come back to the Bronx River. So that is his goal. So like you see this running thing like this. That's what he does. He runs. And Fred is originally from the Philippines, so he taught me about this world called Kapwa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
which-
get to meet Fred because we've got our animal and nature thing going on.
Oh, yeah, so like, so his whole thing is about bringing the dolphins back to the Bronx River, and he taught me the word kapwa, which is a Filipino word for share humanity, in the original Babayan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I just
got-
did a project, I posted something about the.
Oh, so well, yeah. So I included the word. So Fred taught me the word, so I teach other people the word in Babayan, which is the kapwa. So I put it on his shirt there. Me and Fred had a really interesting conversation about the Babayan, but yeah, that's Fred. And my first person here, which I can cover Fred up with, which was Samira, who's also this really incredible person in the Bronx. She is becoming a scientist to work on degenerative diseases, and she's really incredible as well. In the Bronx, she started this project in the Van Cortlandt Park. Like her flowers that she picked were hibiscus and tulips, which was really ironic because she did this project to bring back to life.
Populated?
Not repopulate.
Regenerate,
Regenerate. Okay, so
Pollinate?
replenish,
Rehab?
Oh my
replenish.
God, thank you so much, guys. I have such bad recall. So there's an enslaved African burial ground in Van Cortlandt Park that was really dilapidated. So Samira, as a student, got a bunch of her friends to go and rehabilitate that space. So they planted a bunch of tulips and other plants there to change the look of the space so that when people go there now, they can like pay proper respects to the enslaved Africans that are buried in that burial space in Van Cortlandt Park. She started a club called SUAS, which is Students Uplifting Ancestral Spaces, and they also launched a research project to track the movements of enslaved Africans throughout the Bronx. Again, Samira was not born in the Bronx, but she is doing the work to like, collect the history of the Bronx and like make the Bronx a better place. It's like, these people do great things and like their stories, Bronx stories. So like, I just thought this is like things I should collect too. Like even the other day, she said, "Why did you pick me?" And I'm like, "Please, like shut up. Like why wouldn't I pick you? Like please." But yeah, like these are the people I picked, and I just feel like they deserve to be celebrated. And I have 6 more people to paint for this. So.
Beautiful.
Wow, that is.
I like your work. Your work remind me when I first become a photographer. I have a project to take the portraits for the people who live in a very old community is going to be torn down by the government. So we go to take portraits for the people living there, and it's natural happen, and you can hear a lot of stories they tell how they grew up in that community. And when I come here, I lost that community. I found that you can't find any other place. You just can find in the place you grew up. That connection, that emotional connection is very very touching. Yeah, so when I hear about you talked your community, you're very happy. That made me feel about that moment I made that work.
Yeah, but at the same time, I get it in a sense, because I used to live in Bronx, Kingsbridge area, and that was like pretty much the first experience of coming to New York City and start my life over here as a New York City citizen, not real New Yorker. But it's interesting as I get to know more about the culture of New York City, and I'm more to realize that there's this profound proudness of being a New York City people. And so there's like always this idea of, yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, yeah, I'm from Manhattan, yeah, I'm from Queens, but never, I don't get to really hear about like either Staten Island or Bronx. And it's like, there's sort of an inherent in people trying to avoid much of the conversation about talking about Bronx, especially from people from different boroughs. And I'm starting to wondering, like, why not? Like, why? What's the problem with this? Because maybe I never really get to know the full history of this, or never get to know about, like, maybe there's the underlying meaning behind of it, or even like a sort of preconceptions about it. But as a person who completely like unrelated to that, just coming to this New York City, it really questions me, like why? I think Bronx has its own coolness into it, and it has its own, flavor and culture melted inside of it. I don't know why not many people are celebrating of that. So in that kind of sense, that I think it is quite important of what you're practicing, that celebrating the people as well as their culture and what they're doing within the Bronx should be really be known to other borough as well. So thank you. Good job.
Thank you. I think that your work brings about like this very sad, difficult part, like David was saying, of erasure of stories, So of course there are stories, but that doesn't mean that they are celebrated. They're not known, they're not told. So there's almost like you're fighting against this tide of erasure. Oh, there's other things we should talk about. That's more important. No, not really. Let's talk about this. But I think it's a great work. Stories bring people to their roots. They connect them, and stories make it so that people of all ethnicities, of all ages, can relate and find, no, this is mine too. The first time for me that I realized how powerful stories, how they could be integrated in a way of making art, was when I was a student. I'm Brazilian originally, and I came here in '82 to do art school after college. And the MoMA had been closed, and they opened a underground area, and it was the first time that we saw a lot of Louise Bourgeois work, and she was so transgressive, and she integrated the stories, very intimate stories of her families, of betrayals, of hard things like this, and as sound, as this all together. It was, to me, it was like, oh, that we can, this is part, it used to be more segregated, the visual arts are this, if you're elitist enough and if you studied enough, you'll understand. If not, I don't really care, But I think she brought this other element that was like, no, it's not just the visual, it can be stories, and the stories don't have to be all cleaned up, they can be like raw.
Yeah, I feel like, as you mentioned, like hip hop was the birthplace. Bronx is the birthplace of hip hop. So like, breakdancing, spoken word, and graffiti. And, that's really, which is now like a worldwide, has been influencing the world like since, the 80s and 90s, and it is like really, like hip hop really does sort of have a major imprint on, I think, youth culture, just sort of like the idea of coolness factor, I think, worldwide. And I think it is a testament to the Bronx. And I do think that the Bronx doesn't really get enough recognition for its contribution to, world culture. And so, your work is definitely important, and these individual stories that you're pulling, as a testament to, Bronx's contribution in many different ways, not just hip hop, obviously, I think it's really important. Yeah. And, I lived in the Bronx for a little bit too. I lived in Mott Haven, and I was in Pelham Park. So, yeah, I'm in Harlem too. So, it's definitely appreciated what you're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love your portraiture, and I think that if you haven't thought about this already, providing the stories for the last open studios, because I think when you go to the Met and you see who has portraits, right, old colonial portraits, you're commemorating like the actions and like the spirit of these people. Old colonial portraits are just because people had enough money to commission portraits themselves, and they're often bad. You know what I mean? It's a taste and a style, but I think that it's important to show commemoration. Other artists have done this too, but I think these stories are really like both of them touch me deeply. And there's a complication behind just the face. I think that also is a way of saying, like, don't read a book by its cover, or don't judge a person by the way they look, because you would never guess just by wondering. I asked about if the dolphin was like a stuffed animal on his head, but then it's because he's a conservationist. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to think of ways to like pair it, and if I want to do something like, I mean, I'm open to input as well. If I want to do something like artsy with the story too, or just like put it there and they're gonna read it, or if I want to like be creative with the display of the story, I'm open to input, and when I display it, you can tell me which one was better. But yes, that's definitely something I have to include because it's part of the whole display. Yes.
I know some people are like, oh,